Well, thank you very much for coming to this session. As you can see, my name is LLewellyn. We've had a discussion on how you pronounce it. I'm actually not Welsh, I'm a fraud, and I can't say it correctly either, so Llewellyn will do. I've come today from Harper University, which is a very small specialist agricultural university in rural Shropshire. Our intake are mainly middle class, traditional youngsters from farming families, but we do have quite a sizable intake of international students, primarily Chinese, and a very healthy international intake of postgraduates. My role at Harper's is in learner support, and I work in the language department, supporting international students from all levels, right up to PhDs and postdocs and staff, anybody whose first language isn't English. So Welsh speakers are included in that, and we support them navigating the language of their courses and their journey through the university. I've been there about 10 years, teaching 25, and I've worked primarily in the Middle East and in Africa. So, for me, working with international students, hearing their struggles and the barriers has become very sort of close to my heart. I had the opportunity recently to do some action research, so it felt quite instinctive and obvious to explore what these barriers might be and to be a voice for those students from my university who perhaps are not being heard adequately. So that's my motive for being here today. I've been given 30 minutes, where are you? 30 minutes, yeah? So I should try and stick to this one. Right. Okay, so the format of the session, very much hoping that you will donate your thoughts and experiences, because I see this as a platform of sharing. I am just a rep from Harper's, one of many, and we have so many views and perspectives that we need to share, and use this opportunity as a platform for actually going forward, rather than just saying something and walking away, and that's where it goes. So my aim very much is just to explain why I did this study, and then definitely canvass your views, and I hope you'll have the courage just to speak openly and share. I want to then share the findings briefly in very simplified form, only because of time and this setting. I can't elaborate too much on what I did, but I'll give you an outline. And then I want again to canvass you and ask how workable are some of the requests that the students are putting to us, leading us that we can make these changes. Do you think we can make them, and how can we? Right, the reason, what made me so impassioned about studying this topic. This student got first, very, very proficient in English, from Beijing University. And she said, we understand half, just half of our content lectures. That is, for me, not acceptable. We have to fix that. And I heard this for 10 years. She is just echoing what I know. So I was then motivated to go and explore this issue a bit more deeply and get to the bottom of it as best I could with the scope of the study that I was able to do. Another driving force was the realization that international students are an essential part of our universities. However big their populations in individual universities, they still represent an important element of how we function and what they bring to our institutions. So international students provide 5% of income, and the majority of that income is generated from Chinese students. At Harper's we have an exchange program with two universities, Wuhan and Beijing. And the learning, teaching and student experience are important factors in maintaining these institutional links going forward and maintaining that they have some longevity. But it's not just financial. And for me, this is the main driving force of listening to international student voices, because they bring so much more than just income to Britain. So that's a quote from the student ambassador, and I think that sums up how they view their contribution to being here in Britain, studying. Another rationale, Harper Adams itself has a learning, teaching and student experience strategy, and we are very much on board in maximising student experience, but I think possibly the voice or barriers that some of the international students have has slightly dropped off the radar amidst all that. And learning itself, to make sure that the teaching methods are as effective as possible, that's where I wanted to focus my attention, because I felt that that was partly where we could fix things. So these are typical pictures of Harper. So we operate in a field, and that's quite a shock for a lot of the international students who have come from busy cities, a huge cultural shift. They only have a year. They come as final year students, having completed 2 years of their degree back home. And so that's a big step in 12 months. It's not even 12 months, it's an academic year. So they're having to make big cultural adjustments, big language adjustments for being here. So this is our library, and these are all our farm sheds. So it's very agricultural based and very different than somewhere here, for example. The literature is saying that the barriers that transnational students face is well documented. We know there are barriers. However, looking specifically at Chinese has sort of largely been missed. Most studies that have been done on the students and understanding lecture content was before the pandemic, before recorded lectures. So the landscape has changed. They're quite dated. So the information that we gathered then, the story isn't the same now. There have been no studies at Harper Adams University about our international students, and most studies in the literature have looked from the teacher perspective, asking the teacher, what do you think the issues are for students? And not many have actually asked the students. So that seemed to be lacking, and I wanted to try and help plug that gap in a small way. So, not only haven't they really asked the students, they haven't asked the students in respect of understanding lectures. They've asked, for example, what are your weaknesses, or what do you struggle with? But not really, what do you struggle with in lectures? And what are those struggles specifically? And there is a lot of anecdotal evidence which spans a decade. So we know there are issues. Thank you. Right, so let me just very quickly, because it's your input that is more important. I did a study, I did some action research. This is what I was aiming to establish, to try and find out. I wanted to find the nature of the perceived barriers. Many students will say, oh, we don't understand, or they talk too quickly. But linguistically, I know from years of experience that when somebody says they talk too fast, for example, what they're often referring to is what happens to language at speed, not the speed itself. We're lazy, we join sounds together. Our tongues can't get round the vowels, so we just cut them out. An example is eggs and bacon. If you say that fast, it becomes eggsen. 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 And when you're studying a language, you don't necessarily hear this connected speech, or it's not explained to you. So you get very proper training, and then you're completely at sea when you hear conversational, social English, or English in connected form. I wanted to establish what was it. Was it speed, or is it linguistically something else going on? And I wanted to find out, amidst all this, whether the barriers were the result of lecture delivery, or was it a student issue that they could be fixing themselves. And I wanted to see not where the blame was, but where the onus perhaps should be, and to establish whether barriers are the result of second language proficiency. It might seem obvious, well, the better your English, the more you're going to understand, but not necessarily. There might be other barriers in place irrespective of your proficiency. And I would go back to that original quote of that student who got it first. She was virtually fluent. Her vocabulary was phenomenal, but she was still struggling. So it wouldn't necessarily be proficiency that was the issue. And whether there were strategies that lecturers could use just to make the lives of students easier. So that's what I was aiming at. So, it was quite a simplistic study, very simple, very small sample size. I'm aware of all the limitations, I'm aware of all the statistical claims that might not be a representative sample and standard deviations and all the rest of it that come with small studies. But some voice is a voice. And I thought, given that we only have this sort of number to play with anyway, it's better I capture it rather than worrying too much what the experimental and designed limitations might be. So that's what we had. But I had a good response rate. So at least I could say, okay, I've captured a good snapshot of the students, and they were all valid, and I had a mixture of question types, and I had 2 focus groups, 6 student volunteers. They're all Chinese students, they're all final year students. I decided to focus on the Chinese because the barriers that postgrads might have, being from a whole wide selection of countries, was going to possibly be different, and that might become a different ballgame. So I just tried to focus, first of all, on Chinese. So, but the literature does say, and I agree, that what these students were saying applies to all international students, in fact. But I wanted to not complicate the picture by exploring all the other issues that might be available to postgraduates. My question, my focus groups were in English. I don't have Mandarin or Chinese to draw on. I know of other studies that did conduct focus groups in Chinese with interpreters, and they got a lot more data, and the students were far more forthcoming, obviously. So, unfortunately, I can't compare like with like, because I really would like to. This is a potted version of what the surveys and the questionnaires and the focus groups reveal. Someone over there was saying, I think it was the first person at the back there that was talking about, was it you? The language that we use and idioms. If you go into a library, obviously, if you go into a library or a bookshop, the idioms used in English, there's like a dictionary. There are that many. So all those are absolutely entrenched in how we speak. We don't even realise we're using them. And they are a huge stumbling block for students, really, this constant use of idioms. And it's like one of the points that was made earlier. Unfamiliar content, they're navigating that, and they're navigating every word they read, every syllable they hear is in a second language. And I have to transport myself back. And I say to my students, if you made me do this in Beijing, I would have to be on the next flight back. I couldn't cope. I just couldn't cope. Mental overload, listening fatigue, it's enormous, enormous. Technical terms, they're navigating new content technical terms as well, but they're having to negotiate those in a second language. Back home in China, when they're being given this new content, at least they're doing it in their native languages and can get their heads around some of it. The concept might be difficult in itself, let alone translated into a second language. Technical terms are a problem. Intonation. Some people don't have much inflection in their voices, don't stress things naturally. Some people are a bit more monotone. You need the fluctuations to navigate the importance of particular parts of what you're saying. And I think instinctively we're doing that without actually knowing ourselves. Strong accents. That's another issue. Not that it's easy to do anything about it if you're a Scottish speaker or something. Beautiful accent, but you can't do away with it necessarily, can you? So that's probably a bit more difficult. Limited use of paralinguistic features. They are relying on your face, they are relying on your eyes, you're relying on body language. I gesticulate naturally, I think, and my students have said to me, oh, we don't understand anything, and I said to them, well, oh dear, what don't you understand about my lessons then? That, you know, we must have all the same problem. And they said, no, we understand everything you say. And I think it's not what I'm saying, it's all the surrounding body language possibly that's reinforcing what I'm saying or helping me navigate what I'm saying. So I have become proud gesticulator. Limited word stress. I sat in lectures with colleagues and I think, oh, only you just say it with your voice. And this word, they'll get it, and then you can see they'd all be writing it down, but they can't separate the important items from the unimportant ones because you're listening with equal importance to everything, and you have to be very, very efficient to separate that out at speed in real time. I remember when I was in the Emirates and I went into classrooms and all my students were saying yummy, 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 and I thought this is insignificant. So I went home, tried to look it up, couldn't. My husband's an Arabic speaker, fortunately, and I said, what does this yummy mean? They keep using it everywhere. And he said, oh, that is a filler. We do. And I was listening with equal importance to that because I didn't know any different. So you have to extrapolate that and put yourself in your position. So, limited discourse markers as well. Saying, now on my next point, finally, you're helping them navigate through the stages of something. And without that, they don't know if we're progressing on to another point or not. Colloquialisms, another difficult thing to navigate. They come hand in hand, I think, with idioms. It's the same sort of batch of words that need thinking about. Fast spoken speed of delivery. Somebody here was mentioning that. Only 24% said it was significantly a problem. However, I don't think those results reflect what was really going on. Because, although it wasn't a huge percentage, it was consistently in the focus groups, all the open-ended media responses were flooded with comments about speed. So I don't think it was reflected in the questionnaire questions themselves, but it was hidden in there. Additional patterns and trends that were coming out of the data, they felt their weakest skill was speaking, writing. Listening is further down the list than I would have expected. I would have thought listening would have been more of an obstacle than they were mentioning. But however, in the context of why they're at Harper's, they are very determined to pass. Their motive is to pass, so their focus is on writing and grades. So they possibly don't necessarily recognise that some of these other skills are necessary or weaker. They're probably isolating the skills that they see are holding them back from that grade on that assignment. Not appreciating that it's all part and parcel. You need all those skills. Colloquialisms really featuring highly. They don't have a problem obtaining attention. I was asking them, do you get listening fatigue? It's just overload. And they said, no, not too bad. It's okay. We can cope with that. Which I felt was impressive. I wondered if contracted forms, our connected speech, eggs and bacon, was an issue. Not really. And that was surprising to me because in other environments when I've taught it has been. We at Harper's record, I think this is standard, we record all our lectures and they're available to students beforehand on our Learning Hub and our Moodle on the pages, and they say it is easier if they can watch it beforehand, big majority. And they've noticed the lecturers, and I think this is obvious as well, lecturers speak more slowly when they are on the recorded thing because we're not babbling, are we? We're more focused on what we're saying, and they find that helpful. 100% of students want a glossary of technical words before or during or certainly available within a short time frame of that particular lesson. And whatever videos you might share, they need English subtitles, because I think it's the difference between watching a video and listening to the radio. It's all ears, but if you've got some visual element that you can reinforce what you're hearing, that helps. It helps your the challenges that are in your head. So I think what's coming out of that is speed. All the things that we've mentioned that were reflected in the results of that questionnaire and the focus groups, but also their educational background. They haven't had exposure to conversational English. It's all been focused about passing exams and passing IELTS tests to be able to cover it all. And they readily admit that their teachers back in China are not native speakers themselves, so they're not really necessarily hearing authentic English in the situations, and they're catapulted, and they've focused on academic English, yet they're actually catapulted into social situations and all the surrounding English that they require, working in groups and giving presentations, isn't academic written English. That's only part of what they need. So they're coming, they admit, fairly ill-equipped. So this is what they want from us. I think they, for me personally, because I do feel a little bit passionate about this, they are very small asks of us, and if they feel they're going to make a big difference to what they can access, then it's worth us trying at least. But actually, in reality, when you're talking and you're busy focusing on your content and you're running a bit late, I can imagine it's very hard to speak slower and to forget to stress a word or to use your hands and things. So that was really what we're in the process of sharing with staff at Harper's, deciding the best way forward to make that most effective and to recruit the most listeners to this scenario. So the conclusion, perceived barriers are real, they are real. Chinese students share the same challenges, understanding lectures as all international students, and that's supported by the literature. Educational and experience and cultural conditioning hinder adjustment, and I think Harper's has a particularly students at Harper's have a difficult time because they're only here for a year. Studies have shown that students who have that adjustment time of 2 years, the results are fundamentally different in attainment because they've had more time to adjust. So possibly Harper's needs to examine possibly why we're only having them for the final year and why we're doing our students a disservice perhaps. And they could, lecturers, we could all make small changes that would benefit all of our students, I think. How workable, I've got exactly half a minute. How workable do you feel those requests are from personal experience, knowing how we are today, every day, navigating all sorts of other challenges? Well, thank you very much.
Wonderful.
I'm going to hand over to the next person.
Thank you very much. Thank you.